Welcome everyone to episode 44 of Pantry to Plate. I am Kristen, the dietitian, and I'm coming to you from the Kaiser Permanente Learning Kitchen at the Atlanta Community Food Bank. And I always say I'm excited, but this is fun for me. We're working with canned pumpkin today because 'tis the season of everything pumpkin spice flavored. And I wanted to share a couple of different ways that you can use your canned pumpkin that isn't necessarily going to be a dessert. So I've got 3 different recipes for you. So let's get started. First off, I want to clarify that we're talking about pure canned pumpkin puree, not pumpkin pie filling. So pumpkin pie filling is going to have added sugar and all of the pumpkin pie spices to it to make it very easy for you to put your pie together. But we're talking about plain pumpkin with no spices or sugar added to it. So I want to make sure you grab the pure pumpkin if you're going to try these recipes. Awesome. Now let's get started. First thing we're going to make is a very cool recipe using canned pumpkin or canned sweet potatoes. We're going to make biscuits. So this is going to only have 4 ingredients, and it's not going to take a ton of your time to put together. So first ingredient is our flour mixture. So we're using a store-bought pre-mixed baking mix. So that could be like a Biscuit or a store brand of that type of baking mix. That is a convenient option because it already has all of your leavening agents in it. So all you have to do is dump it and mix it all together. So we've got about 3 cups of your pre-mixed baking mix. And I've got 1 can of pumpkin. If you were using canned sweet potatoes, also 1 can of sweet potatoes. I'm going to dump it right in the middle here. Ooh, can we get that overhead shot? Oh, yes. Here we go. All right, pumpkin in the middle there with our baking mix, and I'm going to add some cinnamon. So I'm not going to add any sugar to this recipe because it's going to be like your classic biscuit with a vegetable added to it. The cinnamon shows up in the background after you take a bite, so it's like high, and it's like a warming spice, but it's not a sweet biscuit. So what you want to do is you want to incorporate your pumpkin. Let's see. Just like so. Your oven is going to be at 400 degrees or 450 actually, because they bake in about 10 to 12 minutes. So it's going to be a quick bake. I might have to add a little bit more pumpkin to this. It was a little messy at the moment. That's okay. What's really cool about this is you do not have to roll them out and cut them out unless you want to. So you can do that with a rolling pin. If you want, you can roll it out to about 1.5 inch thickness. And then you can use a 2-inch biscuit cutter or a glass or an empty can to cut your dough into rounds. Look how orange this is. This is awesome. You can also do it drop style where you get it all nice and mixed up, and then you just take a big spoon and you scoop it onto your baking dish. They're going to look rustic and they're not going to have like a defined shape, but that is, I think that's beautiful. All right, here's our dough. Really nice and orange. I left out an ingredient. But, so it actually doesn't look like it needs it. I'm going to try. Let's see. I'm not sure if this is going to. Yeah, there we go. Okay. My example here is a little bit less than a whole recipe, so I'm not going to use that whole amount of milk, and this feels like a really great texture, so we're going to keep it moving. So what I'm going to do, instead of doing a roll and cut, I'm going to just get a little bit in my hand, I roll into a little ball, I'm just going to flop it on the thing, the baking dish. You can use cooking spray if you like to keep them from sticking, or you can use parchment paper like I'm doing here. There we go. A whole recipe makes about 18 biscuits. And this smells like pumpkin pie without this, like even without the sugar, it smells like pumpkin pie. Go. Get a couple more here. If you want to, you could take these balls of dough and put them in like a cake pan. And then as they bake, they will like come together and fill in the whole pan, and that looks really cool. That's another option for baking them. Okay, here we go. Got my biscuits. They're ready for the oven. They're so pretty. Remember, 450 degrees for about 10 to 12 minutes. All right. The next two recipes are going to be something that you can actually eat with your biscuits. So if you really want to go all out on the pumpkin, you can have pumpkin biscuits with two different styles of soup. So the first soup is going to be a coconut curry pumpkin soup. It's a lot of words. But it's going to be really nice and savory and flavorful, and very, very similar to butternut squash soup, which, fun fact, canned pumpkin is often more butternut squash than it is pumpkin, because pumpkins and butternut squash are in the same family. Okay, I've got a little bit of oil here in my pan. I already got it heated up. I'm going to go ahead and add my chopped onion. I'm using one whole onion. Yeah, that's a good view. I'm just going to let this cook for 3 or so minutes. And then we'll add the chopped garlic. You could also use ground garlic if you want to skip that chopping step. You can also use frozen chopped onion if you like. No chopping needed if you choose to do that. All right, so I'm going to take my garlic now. So I already smell it. It smells amazing. I wish you could smell it, especially for this dish, because I think that I might receive some question marks about combining these ingredients together. But the savory really balances out the sweet of the pumpkin, the natural sweetness that is. I'm going to go ahead and add my spices, because I like to toast the spices in the oil with the base vegetables. It helps to infuse the oil with the flavor. So I'm going to do that. My spices are curry powder. You can choose hot or mild. And then the original recipe calls for garam masala. So if you have that, definitely use it. Or you could pull some of the individual spices that make up garam masala, like cinnamon and cumin, coriander, and cardamom, and a little bit of black pepper. So I just added a little cumin, a dash of cinnamon, and some black pepper. And you can use what you have on hand. Beautiful, and it smells amazing. Okay, so for the remaining recipe, we are going to use 28 ounces of pumpkin. So that's going to be 2 of your regular size cans, or 1 of the fat can from the store. So this is 2 cans of pumpkin. I'm going to go ahead and add that. And then I'm going to use about 2 cups of a low sodium vegetable broth. You could use chicken or beef if you have that on hand. Try to aim for low sodium so you can control how much salt goes into your dish. And the vegetable broth here is going to make this dish completely plant-based, so no animals. It's going to be a vegan soup. There we go. So we're going to just get this all combined. The longer this sits in the heat, the easier the pumpkin will dissolve into the liquid. So if you feel like you find little chunks of pumpkin in there, just let it cook along. Okay. So the name of this is coconut curry. So we've got to add some coconut milk here as well. That's going to make it even more of a soup consistency because you can see that this is still pretty thick. So I'm using 1 can of a low-fat coconut milk, and that is about 2 cups. It's going to be super creamy. That looks so good. Sorry, I'm super into this, I guess. This looks beautiful. Oh, it smells so good. Okay. This is going to be my special ingredient. Anytime I make soup that doesn't have a protein source, a few of these ingredients will have a minimal amount of protein, but not enough to make this a complete meal. So what I like to do is add beans. Just, when in doubt, add beans. So I chose a can of cannellini beans. I drained them and I rinsed them really well. I chose this bean because they're really light in color and they're really soft. So it's going to make it easy to blend them in later on after they cook into the soup. I'm adding them now so they will get warm and they will have had some time to heat through, and I'll make them a little bit easier to blend. You can also leave them whole if you like to give your soup some texture. That is totally up to you. Okay, I got all my ingredients. No missing ingredients. So I'm going to just let this come to a simmer, and then we're going to come back to it after we start this second soup. So I'm just going to switch out my burner. Okay, so our second soup may shock you. It shocked us. Joy and I worked on this recipe together, and we were so surprised at how well it turned out. So hold on, I'll show you. Okay, here we go. So for this soup, we're going to pretend like there's no pumpkin in this soup because it's a tomato soup. When you combine tomato paste and canned pumpkin together, it is the texture and flavor of canned tomato soup. I know it sounds crazy, but it really does come together so well. So I'm just going to add all of the ingredients to the pot. I'm going to start with 2 cups of low sodium vegetable broth. Vegetable here is the key because you want it to taste like that classic tomato soup. If you've got chicken broth though, no worries, it will work the same way. So we're going to start with the broth so we don't have a bare pan to put our pumpkin and our tomato paste in. So this is 1 can, 1 regular size 15-ounce can of pumpkin. Okay. And this is 1 6-ounce can of tomato paste. So we never ever use a whole can of tomato paste, right? So if you happen to have used 1 tablespoon and you have the rest left over, that is a fine opportunity to use it up with a can of pumpkin. So a little less tomato paste is not going to hurt this dish. Here we go. There's my paste. And then for my seasonings, I'm gonna add a little garlic powder and onion powder to give it this savory flavor, and just a little bit of salt because tomato paste doesn't have any salt added to it. It's just very concentrated tomato, and it'll come with the small amount of salt that is naturally found in tomatoes. So salt, garlic powder, onion powder. And then we're just gonna mix. And then we're gonna bring it to a simmer. And then we're going to add a little bit of milk, or maybe half and half if you keep that in your fridge for your coffee, just to add a little bit of that creamy factor that comes in canned soup. And it also will convert the color from more orange to more tomato soup color. So this is gonna take a little bit more elbow grease because my pan isn't fully hot. What I would do is start with your broth hot. So add your broth and then bring it to a little small simmer, and then you can add in the rest, and it's gonna mix in really easily with everything warm. So that's what I'm gonna do here. I am going to put the lid on and crank up the heat and give it another stir in just a minute. All right, so I've got about a 1/4 cup of milk here that I'm gonna add to the soup in just a few minutes. Everything has started. So we've got sweet potato, pumpkin biscuits in the oven. We've got our coconut curry pumpkin soup going. I'm gonna check on that in just a second. And then we've got our pumpkin tomato soup also going. So let's take a look at those biscuits. Wrong oven. Oh, they look delicious. And they smell delicious. Okay, so as you probably noticed, we made a half batch of these earlier so we could show you the final product. So this is actually the rolled and cut style of the biscuit. So you've got an actual biscuit shape where you can easily cut it in half and fill it with whatever you like. This is the beautiful bottom that you're looking for to confirm that they're done. When you add something that has color to it, to a baked product, sometimes you can't look at the top and decide that it's done because it can affect the color of the dough itself. So always take a look at the bottom. So that is beautiful, and it's got a nice little tap, and I'm gonna just open this up. That's beautiful, and it smells delicious. I'm just gonna have a bite. It's a really moist biscuit. It doesn't taste like pumpkin. And you get the cinnamon flavor on the back end. So, I'm curious. I would love to hear your thoughts about how you might eat this biscuit. Drop it in the chat for us so we can get your ideas and share them in the resources that are associated with this video. I see myself doing like peanut butter and a honey mixture and putting it in there and eating it like maybe for breakfast. You're gonna get a little bit of fiber from the pumpkin in the mix, and that's really great for slowing down the digestion, especially for things like biscuits that are considered to be very carb heavy. So let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear your ideas. Okay, there's some bubbling happening over here. Let's go back to our soups and see how it looks. Okay, so we're gonna do the tomato soup here because it is closer to me, and that is exactly what we're looking for. There we go. It's mixing together really well. we're gonna turn it down. You know what? I'm gonna grab my whisk and get those final little clumps out. I'm using a silicone whisk because I'm using I have a stainless steel pan. It's a good idea to not scratch up your equipment if you've got this. There we go. Beautiful. All right, that did exactly the trick. Like, does that not look exactly like tomato soup? Okay, let's go ahead and add this a little bit of milk. Now, the dairy milk will make this a not plant-based dish. So if you're plant-based, feel free to use any non-dairy milk that you prefer. Something not flavored or sweetened, that might be a little weird. So any of that will work. All right, here we go. Tomato soup made from pumpkin and tomato paste. Okay. There we go. I mean, did you see how quickly that came together? Here we go. A beautiful tomato soup. Actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to eat all the things today. So I'm going to take a little piece of this biscuit. Tastes exactly like canned tomato soup. Yeah, especially with the biscuit, that just kind of pulled it all together. So it may sound a little weird, but it's delicious. And when you are in a pinch and you don't have a lot of time to make a meal, great opportunity to pull some of those things that may be hanging out in your pantry. Okay, I'm going to switch my pots back around. Get my coconut curry. Okay, let's take a look. Got some bubbles here. Oh, it smells so good. So good. All right, I'm gonna give it a little taste before I blend it because I haven't added any salt here yet. We got a little bit of salt from our low sodium broth, but otherwise, no salt from any of the other ingredients. Yeah, I need some salt. And a little more seasonings. I went a little light on the curry, so you may not know this, but curry can easily change from a delicious flavor to a bitter flavor if you add too much to the dish. So I was a little cautious because I didn't want it to be bitter because you can always add more, but you can't take it away. So I added a little bit more curry powder. And I'm going to add a little bit of pepper. All right. Tomato soup is bubbling away over here. Okay. So to blend this up, you have two options. I'm going to use an immersion blender, or also called a stick blender, that you can use directly in your pot, or you can transfer it to a blender. But when in that case, you have to let it cool down some because there can be a heat explosion in your blender if you do it while it's hot. So in that case, if you wanted to not wait that time to use your blender, you could blend your beans ahead of time if you wanted to. So that is a little helpful tip there. Anytime I go to a thrift shop, I almost always find one of these blenders, these immersion blenders, the stick type. So that could be a good addition if you come across one. Okay, the goal here is to make sure that the entire thing is submerged, or you will have a nice like splash going on, which we don't want. So I'm gonna make sure this is turned down. There we go. So you are going to pull it up and move it around the pot a little bit because it's gonna make a suction underneath the blender. So just keep that in mind. You're gonna have to go in little circles and pick it up every once in a while. And you'll be able to see when you still have beans. I still see a few in here. Okay, you can see the texture change. I don't know if you can see it as clearly as I can, but you can see the texture change, and it's going to add an extra layer of creaminess with the blended beans. Okay. That's so good. This is a great opportunity to go all out with your spices. You can add a lot of different spices to this, not just your curry and your cumin like I did, but you could, any of your really nice savory spices are going to be great in this dish, especially to balance out the natural sweetness of the pumpkin. So this is really good. Very good. Okay, one more ladle. And we're going to serve it up. This is a nice protein and fiber filled soup. There you go. That looks so good. And we're going to serve it alongside our biscuits or some crackers, or I mean, you can serve it alongside a lot of stuff. You know what? Actually, something fun to add some texture to this. What I've done before is I've had Brussels sprouts and I've grated them on a cheese grater, and then I put them in the oven and let them get crispy, and then you put them on top of this, and you have like a great crispy contrast to the creamy and really heavily spiced soup. Not spicy, it's not hot, it just has a lot of spices in it. So I would recommend that, or you could put some pumpkin seeds or anything else that'll add some texture. I don't know, you tell me. What would you put on top of your pureed soup to give it some really good texture? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, friends. Partners, if you're watching, we have canned pumpkin on eHarvest, so be sure to grab some of that for your holiday distributions. And be sure to share these recipes with your neighbors. Neighbors, if you want to find these recipes on your own, you can find our pumpkin recipes along with many other cooking and nutrition resources at the link on the bottom of the screen. I'm also going to drop that bit.ly link in the chat box so you can easily access it. Feel free to peruse around there. There's a lot of good stuff. I hope you will try these recipes using canned pumpkin. and we'll see you in a couple weeks for another episode of Pantry to Plate. See you later.